You're listening to 101 with Tommie Zam. On the 21st episode, we sit down with Chuck Treece talking about skateboarding and life. Let's do this. What's up, Chuck? How you doing, dude?
Well, how are you? What's going on?
Not much, man. How's the weather? You're up in Philly, right?
Yeah, we're Philly town. Like I'm out in the burbs, Ambler area, and we got pummeled by snow.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, we got hit.
And there ain't no skating in the snow, right?
No. Just some indoor spots, but certain places aren't heated, so when it starts to freeze, once it gets below like 32, it's crazy. It starts to hurt.
I feel you, dude. I feel you, man. Like I grew up in the Panhandle in Pensacola, Florida. So a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, you live in Florida, it doesn't get cold there. I'm like, nah, it gets cold here, man. There's times that, I won't go outside and skate unless it's like 60 degrees. If it's like below 60, forget about it.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yes, and that's why I moved to San Diego because it's 70, 50 all year long, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that place is blessed out there. It's wild.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, look, some of the viewers, some of the listeners know who you are, and there's some that don't know who you are. Okay. Tell us just a little bit about you.
Well, as far as things that I like to do, and why I was able to create that into a lifestyle is, I'm a skateboarder and a musician, and both, for some reason, I wanted to take to a level of more of exploring about what both skateboarding and music, were all about. So instead of just staying at one level, at a basic level, I tried to go to the highest level of just like meeting the best people and being influenced by the best people and learning from those people, both in skateboarding and music. And then they both overlapped. And that's kind of like where my whole thing stands. I was kind of like able to take advantage of two different lifestyles while watching all these different scenes grow up. It was really cool because it never happened before. Like, all the new bands and everything that was going on at the time when I was a young kid, it was pretty crazy. It was happening like really fast.
Hell yeah. That's rad, dude. And you grew up in Delaware, Newark, right?
Yeah. Newark, Delaware. And in Philadelphia. My dad lived in Delaware and my mom lived in Philadelphia. So I went back and forth.
Okay. And then you mostly started skateboarding more in Philly or Delaware?
Both, but it kind of took hold more in the suburbs of Delaware. Like my dad and I lived in Wilmington, like closer to the city. And then he moved us out to the burbs where it was just, we have more space and, he was relocated for his job. So I was able to buy a skateboard there, like at age, I think 13. Mm-hmm. That was it. Just kind of it stuck.
Yeah. And what was it like skating up there in Delaware? Was it like?
It was cool because it was like there was still like a big like surf community attached to it, and I don't know, the style was always there because the guys that I learned from, they all surfed and did things, and skied and did whatever, but they all kind of like, they were all a part of their own kind of tribe. It wasn't like so all over the place. The skaters were known just because of how we looked and what we did. But most of the guys I learned from were pretty much just like sports activated people that they were just into the cooler sports, you know what I mean? That kind of turned into skateboarding.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And do you remember your first skateboard?
Yeah, the first one was just a regular generic company. And I can't remember the name of that one, but then I had one board that was called a Newport Slalom, which is like just kind of regular slalom board, but it wasn't really a park board. Mm-hmm. And my first real skateboard was a Sims wood kick with tracker trucks and blue Kryptonics, I think blue 60s or something like that.
Dude, that's a badass board right there.
Yeah, it was wild. Way back board, no concave, no nothing.
And you mostly skated more street, or did you skate more vert when you were younger?
There were all these different parks. Like my original park was a skate park called Easy Rider, which was in Wilmington, Delaware. And then Cherry Hill Skate Park opened up, and that was more of an indoor, like bowls, and it had like smaller areas, banked areas that were good, but it was more, we only hit banks and different things because of it. someone saw a cool spot to kind of barge or backyard, like the backyard pool scene became kind of the backyard bank scene, you know what I mean? Because not everybody wanted to get like knocked up in pools all the time. So those guys took the same hunt to find different spots to skate. And everybody loves skating, drainage ditches and stuff like that. So it's, it's fun times.
Yeah, I remember back. That's what we mostly skated when I was living in Pensacola. Is a lot of drainage ditches because I mean it was so fun, dude. You just hit them and it's just so much fun.
It's all style and fun.
Yeah, and that's crazy because that's how it was in the '80s. A lot of people skated drainage ditch, So I wonder if it's going to come back, because now slappies are back, and then hopefully things like that will come back, skate drainage ditches and stuff,
we have one locally called the Dust Bowl where I skated. Also, Bam Margera and a bunch of other guys came up, and people are still skating it. They've added some different obstacles, and it's changed through the years. But I remember when that was the Dust Bowl, other than like Reading Skate Park, those were our two main spots around here where pretty much all of us, when we all first saw each other skate. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Just some raw drainage ditch. You know what I mean? To go there now, I mean, I would love to, but I wouldn't want to be chewed up by that concrete.
No, definitely not. You definitely don't want to, man. Yeah. And then you moved. When did you move to Philadelphia? Like officially moved to Philadelphia?
Officially, I moved to Philadelphia my senior year of high school, so the summer of '82, and moved up. Instead of going to college, I just convinced my dad, like, hey, let me just give this music thing a try. And so I wanted to go up to, because I knew that there was a lot of music in Philadelphia by always going to all these different events as a kid with my mom and also my dad. And so I figured if I got myself into a music scene, because back then there was musicians on the street, there was way more clubs going, there was all these different, if you had the time and effort to put into music, regardless of me being in the punk rock, you were able to go to Philadelphia and make yourself known, and then you would gradually go to New York and venture on West Coast if you wanted to. But that was like kind of the jumping ponds for me to figure out whether I wanted that type of success is just in a work-related situation or just being kind of like a rock star. So I chose the work-related situation, like know as many good people and different things as you can, that type of lifestyle with everything that I was doing.
That's awesome, man, and that's rad to have your parents like support you. I mean, did they always support you what you wanted to do, or
they all. I think with see, I was born in '64, so I just think that from that mindset of people that were having babies then and they're like, I guess they were still young, so mid-20s or something. I don't know. It seems like if you had dreams and if they weren't like steadfast in like, the armed forces or something that you knew that you would be getting something back from, like dreaming about skateboarding and music, which is kind of unnecessary. So it's not like they were in the way, but I had conversations of why are you doing this and only concentrating on this. And for me, my mind was saying, well, I can't split my mind up into being into school and giving that 100%. And then kind of doing what me and my friend Tom Groholski had to do. We had to kind of recreate vert skating again on the East Coast because it was all what was ever left on the East Coast, was barely surviving, and then it was barely surviving on the West Coast. So everything had to kind of reinvent itself. And if we weren't thinking about skating 100%, because it was way more skating than music. McRae was there, but it was always like, we got to go to this spot. We got to drive to Ohio. We got to drive to Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, these are major trips with like skate trips with no cell phones, no computers, just like a paper roadmap. You know what I mean?
or just guessing like, all right, let's turn right. No, wait, go left, go right.
Yeah, we're literally trusting people. And like, we pull up in like down south and we got to ask somebody with a gas station at the gas station where the backyard ramp is. And like, it's happened like almost every trip. And someone's like, yeah, my brother skates there. You know what I mean? Just some random thing. And, people, we trusted each other back then without even any cell phone usage. So I'm glad that people dealt with skateboarders trying to find these ramps and you know what I mean? And not giving us a hard time, because we do look like back then we were viewed differently. You know what I mean? It's not what we weren't accepted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we're I remember because I grew up, I started skateboarding like 8th grade. So it was kind of like late 80s, you know? So, I mean, I know what it was like growing up.
Yeah, it was raw then too. It was raw.
Yeah, especially in the South, you know, it's, you know, they looked at us like criminals or hooligans and this and that, you know what I mean? It was just like, I remember times we get chased and beat up by not cops, but rednecks and stuff, you know, where cops like threaten to shoot us and stuff, you know,
Totally.
you know, and it's crazy. But it's just, I feel like this generation doesn't know about it, or it hasn't really experienced that way, you know?
Yeah, because it's just the MTV and Bam Margera and those guys have been able to kind of bridge the gap, and everyone's been able to see that just skateboarders aren't these just linear guys, or not linear guys, but people that are just like surf guys or just like bratty guys from some suburb or something. They're all different types of people, from Stevie Williams to myself to Bam to, you know what I mean, to anyone new today, Costin. I mean, there's so many different characters that skateboarding is supporting. I'm just happy that we were all able to do it in a way. You know, like everyone has their own story of what they wanted to do and who they wanted to meet and why they wanted to stay or why they wanted to move. You know, like guys like Chris Pastris being from the East Coast and then totally relocating out west and really making a mark with stereo and just like giving like his East Coast pride to the West Coast, which is it's all love. You know what I mean? But you know, him doing that, he created the legacy with Jason Lee and all those guys. You know, I mean, it's like really heavy when you think about how important skateboarding is. Like if you think about it as a travel companion, it normally leads you in the right direction. You know what I mean? For some oddball reason, I don't know why. I've just seen it happen so many times. I've heard about someone moving, and then 5 years later, they're like, boom.
And they're like blown up and known and stuff like that. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's the work, and you know what I mean. It's amazing that California was able to like embrace skateboarding. California and Brazil, because a lot of people don't know Brazil has never left skateboarding and never had a skateboard crash. They've always kept their parks from the 70s until now. So between Brazil and the West Coast is kind of like the birthplace of like the original stoke of skateboarding, and especially the business and the fact that people are creating trade shows and different things like that. You know what I mean? It's heavy watching it being all rebuilt.
No, it definitely is. It's good for us, you know what I mean? Because we're kind of, in a way, we're getting accepted for being a skateboarder or being whatever, you know.
Yeah. Really cool. It's common culture now.
Yeah, and then back to the music. So, what inspired you to become a musician? Like when you were younger, were there like certain bands or certain groups, or did your parents like play some like old school music, and you're like, dude, I want to start playing this, you know?
Yeah, my parents were always rocking records, and my dad was also a musician. So I basically, I guess just kind of was messing around, and I guess drums started making more sense. My brother picked up guitar, and from like I guess like age 6, my brother was 4. We've just been all just kind of like goofing around and jamming together. And then once we were able to jam with my father's, he had a top 40 band also who like rehearsed in the living room.
That's sick, dude. What did your dad play?
He played tenor sax and bass, drums, guitar. I'm basically copying my pop. Like, you know, like my younger son who plays, you know, is kind of like doing not what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it, like learning how to play different instruments and then having fun with it. And my dad just taught me to kind of learn about music and not really worry about what band you're in or what's going on. Like learn the music for what it is and learn how to play it. Because the top 40 band, you got hired on your professionalism of sounding as close to the record as possible. So when people couldn't go see the band live at the regular, you know, major concert, you know, venues, they were able to see these cover bands do their favorite songs, and the fans got off on it that these bands would end up sounding just as good or even better than some of the touring bands. You know what I mean? It was just weird. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was the one that chose to want to be a songwriter and be influenced, have the bands that I was listening to actually influence my songwriting versus my dad was just learning just people's songs, just playing them and having fun, learning the value of music, each different genre of rock and blues and stuff like that. So I got lucky, like learning from a free-minded person.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Have a father or mother or a family, parents
Yeah.
to be free minded, because I mean, that way they let you do whatever you not let you do whatever you want, but like let you become you. You know?
Yeah. It was good. I mean, my mom took me to a lot of shows where, you know, when I was younger, we went to see Parliament Funkadelic and you know, just Santana, just different things at the Spectrum in Philly, and there'd always be people, you know, smoking weed and doing whatever. And I never, like how people today think it's a weird influence on young people, but to me, it was never a part of like how it was influencing me about what I wanted to do with my life. It was just kind of a smell and a memory of like being in these big places, and like it just feels like everyone in the crowd wants to kind of like let off their steam. And for somehow music is one of the only ones that kind of can attract 10, 20,000 people. And, you know, just for the sake of a band being on stage, you know what I mean? And I was really intrigued, especially watching Parliament Funkadelic play, you know what I mean? And watching George Clinton and all the different bands and characters, and at a young age, watching the Mothership Connection tour like happen. Yeah. It was mind-boggling. That's our Pink Floyd, our Beatles, not our like from Skin Color. I'm just people who love funk, and R&B, and like the original soul rock. You know what I mean? Like that. I grew up in the right time because we lost Jimi Hendrix. So those guys were just trying to fill that. To me, they were trying to fill that void. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was really a huge impact on me live to see that someone thought about that much just to play funk music live. You know what I mean? It's just heavy production.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. You got to see all those guys, man. I mean, all those bands, because that's amazing. You know, I mean, just to see George Clinton play and so on and so on. I mean, that's amazing. So being that young, seeing them playing, that's what inspires you to become more of a musician, right?
Yeah, because we were always sitting, like, you know, not as close to the stage, so you really couldn't get like what, you know, like my kids grew up with just being backstage all the time. But so I was always there to able to see the show of how it would impact me and impact the people around me. You know what I mean? Then I would go home and practice my drums from the same energy. You know what I mean? Which was cool. You know what I mean? Because that's why you go to see a band or someone, even in theater, you know, going to see a good play. If that's what you're into, you kind of leave buzzing, and then if you're a creative person, you take that and you use that to do something else.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's so true. And you know what? That's the same way with skateboarding. You know, that's why music and skateboarding go good together. You know.
Yeah. It's like watching Christian Asoy skate, and then you got to go skate. It's like, oh my god.
Well, there's a quote that I read about, or I read about what you said, and it's kind of true. It's kind of like how I felt when I was in high school, is because I wanted to always, you know, skateboard. I found skateboarding in like at a younger age, like probably like going into eighth grade, and you know, I was introduced. You know, I grew up with like Scott Stanton and Pete Kelly and Ricky Beambaum and all those guys, and you know, and one of the guys that my neighbor guy that lived next door to me, he was a killer vert skater. His name was Arthur Adams, and he killed it, dude. And like, and I remember him giving me my first real board. It was a Pal Peralta Lance Mountain with tracker trucks and slime ball wheels on it. And you know, and that's when I started skateboarding. It was like I said, summer 8th, and then I just kind of like fell in love with it. And you know, and this quote that you said is, I was sick of high school and I knew I wasn't going to college. That's how it means to me, because that's how I felt, you know. Because I wanted a skateboard, dude. I always told myself, look, man, if I don't become pro or whatever, I want to be part of skateboarding and do whatever I can to help grow it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You know? Yeah, the fiend for skateboarding at that time, because it's just a classic time to be connected with a bunch of people that when you went into a city, 9 times out of 10, you knew every skater before you left. You know what I mean? And those memories for people and all the early fanzines and what led into what's going on today. You know what I mean? People are still vibing and doing all of that. It's just amazing that it was so bare before, and now it just exploded because of that original stoke, you know, the stuff that you're talking about. Because the early 80s was when it was really kind of was like a reignition of what skateboarding even meant to people, because a lot of people on the outside forgot that it was going to grow out of just a surfer kind of guy. You know what I mean? It was going to just take over all the inner cities. It just had to just be a new spark had to happen, a new struggle.
No, definitely. And just saying that quote, it meant a lot to me because that's how I felt, you know what I mean? Exact same way. And there's probably a lot of people too that, you know, going to hear this quote and they're probably like, dude, that's how I felt.
Yeah. Well, school gave people a sense of struggle. I mean, if they realized how important school could be to people and how much more of an influence, you know, it could, you know, by having, you know, different programs. And so if people weren't as intrigued in school, that they would go and be able to work on themselves somewhere else, because, you know, math and all that stuff, it adds up to something. If you love to do something at all, you have to use everything within everything, being human. That's what I think. I just got bored of the school process because it felt like it was pressuring me to not be creative. You know what I mean? And I was just like fighting that, you know what I mean? Trying to find time to be into school and then into being creative. And creativity just doesn't have a time when it comes or not. It's just there. It just shows up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, because I mean, when we were going to school, I mean, you know, it was like if you thought outside the box, you weren't accepted. You're going to fail, or you're going to be a dropout. You're going to be this and this and this, not be anybody in life. You know what I mean? That's how they taught. You know, that's how I was taught in school.
Totally.
You know, I did like I'm gonna become something. Screw you. Yeah. It's just crazy how to think that, and you know, and it's, you know, I'm not trying to say nobody should go to school and this and that and this and that. You know, live your dream and do what you want to do, but school's not for everybody. You know,
right. I mean, if they have, I mean, and I know that they do right now have focused school, but I just think that like my junior high and high school, they had like wood shops and different things. So all my friends that were going to be like future mechanics, you could already see the people that were there for learning it for the lifestyle of it, and then the people that were learning it there just to have the necessity of working on their own cars, and the people that were there to just working it just to be just like, I just want to be a regular mechanic and have no identity at all. It's just amazing to see young minds develop in junior high to high school, and they've taken that away from like kind of everybody. You know what I mean? It's just I'm glad that we came from a world that we had to be super, super creative, and we had to be on what we did. You know what I mean? Everything had to mean something, even if it sucked.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean, dude. And when was your first sponsor? I mean, was it a shop sponsor, or how did you become like?
My first sponsor showed up in my senior year of high school in 1982. Myself and Tom, we were riding his backyard ramp a bunch and just kind of like stirring up just kind of whatever, just by just different fanzines we were just appearing in, and it was getting out west. So we just decided to write, you know, Vans, skateboards, Van sneakers, going trucks, OJ wheels, and there was another thing else that's in there that I'm not mentioning. But we wrote those companies, and I wrote his kind of like letter, you know, submission letter, and he wrote mine, and it was easier for some reason for us to kind of like conversate about what we've been doing, because we did a lot of demos for 4-H skateboarding in New Jersey through his father. We had a portable ramp that we would set up and raise money for. So we took all of that and presented that to those companies, and those are the first real, you know, 4, you know, companies that really got behind us, which is, it was like OJ Wheels, Van Sneakers, Madrid Skateboards, and Going Trucks. Yeah, that was the first 4.
Dude, that's crazy. I mean, thinking about that, like just hearing you say that, like back then, you know, it's not, you know, because we didn't have social media, we didn't have any of that stuff, and you know, and like in videos, you had to wait for skate videos to come out and stuff like that from companies. But I mean, for you to write letters and send in videos of you filming or whatever to get companies to sponsor you, that's pretty awesome, you know?
Yeah. We kept it kind of what his Tom's father and my father, they always kind of were pushing both of us to just kind of believe in our identities, and there's some worth in what we're doing. And so we saw the little opportunities of just like, watching skateboarding crumble and watching all the parks close, and then watching us just cart this blue fiberglass ramp around and do demos. And we were stoked on it, and people were still stoked on it. But the squad was just smaller because skateboarding wasn't as easy to get to, and people didn't want to travel back then. So we were the people that were just keeping that intact. You know what I mean? We had to become the skate park that was torn down. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that still hurt a lot of people when you think about it, because we were kids. I was 16 when Cherry Hill was torn down. It was devastating, man. It was like, oh my God, no.
and then that was your first like real sponsors, but you didn't have a shot sponsor. There wasn't any skate shots back then.
There were Philly. There was, when I was coming up then, it was Country Skateboards, but they kind of closed down, and my skating wasn't as up then. But then the only shop that was really around when I first started getting in the sponsor was Dave Fairman's skate shop. But we hadn't connected yet. Skate shops were still in Philadelphia, weren't a thing. Like the first one was Spike Skates, and I was already on. And they were kind of a sponsor, but it was more or less I was already set up with people in California. So there was different shops around that I would, work with, as I traveled. But I was more or less like, if I don't have to spend money on skateboards, I can just spend money on my trips, on my plane tickets and that stuff. You know what I mean? So that's how I looked at it.
And do you remember your first skate contest?
Skate contest is one that I put on called Philly Freeze. It was way back in I think it was early 80, like 82, 83. What is it? Either winter of 82? No, winter of 83. Mm-hmm. Right in Drexel University. It was a slanted bank we had that was made out of asphalt, and myself and a bunch of other people. I mean, I threw it because I had the prizes from the people that I worked with and the sponsors that I worked with. And that was basically it. My first real contest probably would be when I went out. No, it was a mess series with Tom Grholski.
That was the one down in that was going on in Florida, right? At Kona and stuff like that.
Well, mess series happened out in the Midwest. That's where Jeff Kendall and Bob Pribble and that's where the kind of Tennessee Midwest crew met up with the Pennsylvania crew. Not that many people from the West Coast made it out to this contest. It was more or less all the guys that were kind of in that kind of like inland belt. And so we hit all those contests together. And then from that point, we went down to Kona in 82. And that's when we met Tony Hawk and a bunch of other people. I mean, I think Tom had met those guys on different trips, but the year of 82, I think it was June, is when I met Lance and all those guys in the cab. It was just a crazy, just like, it was like the first 100 people in skateboarding that are still kind of actively there if they haven't, passed on. But they were at that contest at Kona, at Jacksonville, Florida. It's wild.
And take me back to that. How was that when, going into that contest in Kona? What was that like? I mean,
well, that was the most pressure I felt because we were there, and our team captain Bo Brown was going to be there, and also the guy from Madrid and Going and Van. All of our people that we dealt with were going to be there, and that was the first time that I felt like the pressure of having to be up against other people. You know what I mean? Because if you didn't know what to think about, you had to kind of think about, well, all these skaters are here, and like they're the best of the best. So you had to put yourself in check. You know what I mean? And it was a learning lesson. You know what I mean? More than just we were the first. It was like no, I was watching. Like Tony Hawk was 14 at that time, so I was watching him create his style. I mean, Tony didn't party back then. I mean, the people couldn't party around Tony. It was one of those things where he was viewed as a little kid amongst all the other pros because he was the youngest, and people were kind of looking out for him, and they didn't want crazy partying happening around him. You know what I mean? It's cool how because people know Tony he's a big, huge star, and it's all respect due coming from me. But I remember just as a kid, just him being the younger superstar of the bunch, but also a younger person where, they kept his life super, super fragile around him for the sake of keeping his mind right on skating. And I thought that was rad. I thought that was like, okay, whenever he's able to step out and be grown up Tony at least he'll have his own decisions. And that's what I saw. Some kids that got into that too early, they didn't make it out so good.
Yeah. No, we know some of those guys. Yeah, we definitely know some of those guys. And when did you so you did all the contests on the East Coast, and when did you make your trip to the West Coast?
On my West Coast trip, basically, so Kona was in '82. So I think that next fall is when Tom and I drove out to the West Coast, and we just went out there to just skate some parks. I think I actually went on a bus trip to go meet the guys at Madrid right after the Kona contest. It's kind of blurry in my head, but I remember making a bus trip out there by myself, just to hang out with Bo Brown and have him take me around to whatever parks that were there. And then Tom and I made a road trip after that. There was 2 different road trips where we went out to just kind of like, go to Mount Trashmore and go a bunch of different places. So this is early, like, gosh, it's like, 84-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're probably what, about 18, 17?
I was like, just 20, 21, 22.
Oh, 21. Okay. Yeah. And do you travel when you and John traveled, did y'all go to like play music at the same time or what?
Like McRad was more or less, we would play around in Philly and DC and New York, and we, Connecticut, I think the furthest that we traveled to between like 83, 83 to like 80, 84, 80, 85-ish. And then basically what it was, I was doing just some local demos with Tom in Jersey. And I think the furthest we went on a Vans tour was down to Virginia. It was Everett Rosecrans and his sons took us out. They had the plexiglass, like half pipe that had no flat bottom. They had it on the back of just a regular U-Haul trailer. And so we did demos on that. That was like probably, 82-ish. But Tom and I went to get a job one time after a demo at an amusement park called Great Adventure. Mm-hmm. And they were doing a show called California Wheels. And we just walked in with our pads on after this demo we did down at this surf spot in New Jersey. And luckily the guy that was doing the skate show, this dude, Rob Weir, he's from Florida, was a pro skater. He was leaving and they needed skaters to come in. And so from that point on, we were able to just kind of like, so that was probably like 84, 85-ish. We were able to skate and feel like we had some kind of a professional job, because it lasted the whole summer. Tom stayed local. And then from that job at Great Adventure, I was able to go to Tel Aviv, Israel, because they wanted to do the same show over there. So that happened in the summer. And my trip to Tel Aviv, Israel happened that fall, that winter.
Well, so you went to Tel Aviv, Israel. How was that, dude? Like coming from
unbelievable. The most beautiful. Israel is, it kind of floored me, because it was right when the Lebanon crisis was going on. And so it was, my mom didn't want me to go and it was other people didn't want me to go. And I was, in my mind, I was just like, what, that's kind of just fraudulent. You know what I mean? It's like someone gets a chance to go to like Israel to skate and get better. And I know that I'm the only skater and there's a whole show planned out. We just came off a summer, a summer show, run. So I was already mentally ready and prepared and had the whole stick down, you know what I mean? To see people fear a crisis versus an opportunity. That's when I knew I was like, wow, I have to believe in the skateboarding. So the trip from before I even left Philly I had to be dedicated before I even packed my bags because it was something that was new. There was, once again, it was no computers, no cell phones, no nothing. Here's this young kid getting his passport for the first time, this black kid from West Philly, and boom, I have to go to Tel Aviv, Israel and take what I've learned from New Jersey and be professional and somewhere I've never been to this place. It was a completely different world, but it worked and people loved it for what it was because they had never seen people just skating in the streets and, setting up and just, creating fake, just demos, fake demos, meaning like, people just gathering people as we're just skating and there was BMXers with us also. So they let us kind of do our thing over there and it was great, but it was good to see the different cultures outside of skateboarding that had nothing to do with skateboarding, but then those people still supported a bunch of Americans to come over there to represent skateboarding to them. It was a blessed moment for me. You know, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I help promote the Israel skateboard scene over there a lot, and I talk to a lot of Israel skaters and that live in Tel Aviv and stuff. And you know, and on the site and stuff, they send me videos to post up of them skating or skate parks. But yeah, they got so many skate parks over there.
That's crazy,
ridiculous, dude.
I want to go back.
You hear that, guys? He wants to come back.
Yeah, there was nothing there. It was just sidewalks and fun. I mean, there were skaters there. There was guys that were there from the 70s and stuff like that. But it was crazy that, you know what I mean? It was just.
Yeah, there's a lot of skate parks out there. I mean, I see footage of it all the time, man. And I did an interview with Tomer Gabby, who's from Tel Aviv, and he was talking about it, how like skateboarding is just huge out in Israel now, you know, and it's awesome to hear that, you know.
There's probably some crazy skaters out there too. They're probably killing it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have to tag you on some links.
I trip on people's style and everything. That's why I love seeing people skate, because everyone's got a different delivery. You know what I mean? They're influenced by the technical side of it, but everyone's style is kind of their own thing in skateboarding. It's crazy because how many skaters there are that I haven't seen two people who look exactly alike. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And so that's crazy, you know, going from, you know, the United States, from Philly or from, you know, Delaware, going to Israel, and then, you know, you're on this tour and stuff. That's amazing to inspire a lot of skaters in that time to skate and music and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. And then you came back. When you came back to the States, is that when you like got, because I remember seeing your little episode on Skate TV back in the day.
Yeah,
and that was fucking awesome, dude. Like, just to see you playing like 5 different things. You know?
Getting the job done.
So how was that experience, dude?
I'm working with Stacy, and the Skate TV situation was a blessing, because Stacy was really creative, and he had the ways in to a bunch of different companies out there in Hollywood because of his prior, you know, career in acting, and also during his big skateboarding time, he was able to kind of learn how to brand himself early on before that was even done in skateboarding. Like Tony Alva kind of made the first flame and the first spark, but Stacy kind of took that spark and created the first legends, like what he did with the Bones Brigade. So, and the reason why I'm talking about that now is because I wrote Stacy when I was like age 14, and he told me that he was going to create the Bones Brigade and a handwritten letter, excuse me for speaking crazy. And that letter, he talked about basically creating a skateboard team that wasn't a team, that was just a bunch of individuals that would kind of represent the new version of what Powell Peralta was. So this is all written down in his writing. I wish I would have kept the letter, but I just never a pack rat for things like that. So I just read what he had to say about his team, and I knew 2 local guys were skating for him, Jamie Godfrey and Mike Jizolowski. They were both pros. Jerry Hill days. So Stacy helped me kind of be blown away that from an original letter that I sent him from a skateboarder interview, that he was able to write me back, told me about what his new company was. This stuff doesn't even happen in skateboarding anymore. No one shares like inside information like that of something that's big, of that magnitude. But the fact that he wrote me about that, and then his first team was like Tony Hall, Christian Asoy, you know, Mike McGill. I mean, everyone he had on his team, you know, Caballero, you know, just Alan Gelfin, Scott Foss, crazy people. And so I had to be influenced by what he wrote down, because he made sense, and he started to blend it. And by the time that it got to Animal Chin, he had already found a way to kind of infuse music with it because of he did the first Devo video, skate video, which is Freedom of Choice. So he had, once again, his connections within LA going for him because of his acting thing, but he kept pulling skating inside of it. And it started to influence my music. And then for some oddball reason, he was able to say, Chuck, can you do some music, you know, for the videos? After he had already figured out that McRab music, you know, fit on his own. He discovered that, you know, he was the one that was editing Savannah Slammer and put the whole kind of Beware music catalog to those contest runs. And then from the reaction of that, he took that and started, public domain, basically, what people hear weakness and, McShred over the street skating. He basically was able to kind of look at everyone with the trial and error of doing these videos through Thrasher. And then he was able to take what he learned from that and then he just revamped everything else. And it's once again, it's just that he gave me a canvas to be creative within him, kind of curating skateboarding through film. You know what I mean? And it was an honor to work with Stacy. He's a super creative person. You know what I mean?
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome to have Stacy, like that big name person, or not person, but that's big name skater to support you and believe in what you do,
Stacy's the man, dude.
and then how was it? That was your first time being on like a skate TV, like actual TV show. How was that, dude?
Well, yeah, because it was the reason why he wanted to do that is because we were in there doing my last recordings for Propaganda, and that was one of the last videos that I worked on with him. And he just decided at that point, it may have been the one before that, I think Propaganda, but he decided, because he was working with Nickelodeon, to just have let's see if this works. You know what I mean? Let's as you're creative, because he caught me at a moment where I was kind of just batty, you know what I mean? Because I'm in the studio by myself, like no drum machines, no nothing. I'm just like, okay, this is how the drum part goes. This is how the bass part goes. This is how the part. And I'm being all the characters in my head. Then I got to go perform it. And then retrack everything that I've kind of mumbled to myself. It's heavy times. You know what I mean? Just super, super thankful for Stacy for letting me learn from him, because it was all happening. You know what I mean? From the vert stuff to like when he found Rudy and Guy Mariano and all that. I mean, like I was there when he was like, he called me. He was like, "Yo, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here out to LA. You have to see the footage. You got to see these kids. You're not going to believe what's going on in LA right now. They don't even need a skate park. It's like, there's no need for a skate park with these kids." And that was the first, I called them the LA 4. Paulo, Guy, Rudy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. You got to see them.
Sick, yeah.
And at a young age, and when they're starting out and being like, oh, dude, these guys are going to be like, these are the next guys.
Yeah, it was that, because they, being in skateboarding and you get to go to contests, and I saw like when Mike Vallely had his explosion, like going to Oceanside and no one ever seen the ho-ho. I mean, we had already seen it because he's from New Jersey, and we saw what it was. But when he delivered that out there in LA and like Oceanside, I was at an NSA street contest. He just blew everyone's mind. You know what I mean? And he could skate and do other things like that. You know what I mean? That could add on to that. And that was at one level. And watching Tommie and all those guys come in, and Nodis, and just all the Dogtown guys, and Dresden and Ray Barbie and everything. But when they got to like after Frankie Hill, like I thought Frankie was at like one of the highest, like him and Gons were at one of the highest points of skateboarding, where like, because these guys are actually, their lives are in danger. What some of the things that they're doing, it's just
especially Frankie Hill, dude.
Yeah, crazy. It was that, just seeing it in person. And then within that next summer, Stacy finds those 4 kids, and I'm like, this is out of control. Because then they had all the technical flatland stuff down, plus the NART. It was just wild. And young, like super young people like that stoked on skateboarding, you know what I mean? And already having an individual mindset about it. You know what I mean? They didn't have a skate coach. Like Stacy found them, and they were already developed as people. He just turned the camera on. You know what I mean? It's just literally.
That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. To hear that from you and hearing that history of skateboarding, because I mean that's the videos I grew up on. It's like old PAL videos, Animal Chin, Propaganda, go on and on and on. Always to 8th Street videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, to watch those guys skate. I mean, I went out cruising with them, and I would just be goofing around. Like anything that had a ledge and an obstacle way back then with those big vert boards, they were just like, whoa! Like it just. Their mindset about skating was just, it was everything to them was like just a takeoff point. You know what I mean? There was nothing, you know what I mean? It was just, it was wild when the stuff that we complained about, oh, there's no skate parks, and they were like, no, there's plenty of shit to skate. It's like,
and so with I'm gonna go to your music. So being a skateboarder / musician, and in that like 80s and around the 80s and stuff like that, do you feel like you inspired a lot of these skater musicians and stuff like that?
yeah, I totally. No, I don't. No, I don't think no. I'm like it's like with skating, it would be because I've always been in the music since like age 6. I've always looked at myself as like I have to earn my keep within music, and however I get there, that's fine. You know what I mean? I'm not going to hold myself to one route. You know what I mean? Like one way. Skating to me with music was like, because I was writing about the passion of it in West Philly, and there were no skate parks. But when I grew up, there was all these guys that I grew up with that were from West Philly, that were black skaters that did skate vert. Because vert was indoors and it was like skating was blown out, they stuck in. But when it became underground, certain people didn't gravitate to that. And that's, you know what I mean? My whole thing was just to get that going, you know what I mean? And to keep that going, because I thought skateboarding was just going to remain like how it was in the 70s. Boom. You know what I mean? It's boom, and Tony Alva's and dudes are jumping over Fiat cars, and it's a thing. You know what I mean? It's just, but it didn't have the same stay as like what surfing and the surf culture is. And that's probably because they didn't know how to make it or integrate it within movies. The Charlie's Angels thing and most of the stuff that was going on back then. It's cool to look at it now and get a chuckle out of it, but it really wasn't the essence of like what these guys were doing and how they were. They didn't know how to attach the lifestyle to how it was filmed back then, and that's why it took a tank.
Yeah,
because everything, once it came back up, early 80s, everyone was making it like an identity. You're into these type of skaters. You ride these types of boards. You go to these types of spots. Things were limited, but people were still being choosy with things being limited anyway. You know what I mean? Which is cool. It's skateboarders have their own mindset.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you on that. And do you feel like skate TV got you more known for music, helped you out to get more noticeable for music and stuff?
Yeah, totally. Because Stacy was involved with it, and it was involved with Nickelodeon. So people were, into it, and Nickelodeon also had a strong hold with families on the West Coast because a lot of families were out there to believe that if their kids were into some type of sport or some type of whatever, that they kind of give them a little bit more support. So Nickelodeon was kind of guiding families into, well, this is how you create a family style around this new skater or this whatever it is. You know what I mean? So my music was, I think, tied up in how people think about themselves as being like, new parents, new people, and also the tail end of like my punk rock hardcore days, going into more like you're in bands because you want to be out there versus like you're in bands because this is just the only style of music you want to play. Like everything became, it was way more like pigeonholed for me, and then it became way more of like an art exhibit. You know what I mean? Like I'm on this canvas right now. What do I do? You know what I mean? Like how do I learn what's going on? You know what I mean? And there haven't been too many bad turns with learning about skateboarding and pop culture and people and what sticks and what doesn't stick and why skateboarding is so huge right now and why all these black people are wearing Vans right now. Like everywhere I go in West Philly, in my old neighborhood, when I wore them, people didn't, well, what the hell are those? And now I go back and people have Thrasher t-shirts on and Vans, and it's just like regular to them. And it's dope that skateboarding has just opened its doors up to everyone. It's not like you have to be a skater to wear what we consider a lifestyle. You know what I mean? It's cool. Like no one's ever done that.
Yeah, definitely. And did you feel like when you were going to school and stuff, did you have like, because for example, like my friend Arthur I grew up with, he was a skateboarder, but he wouldn't look and dress like a skateboarder or dress like a skateboarder. He had to dress a certain way so he won't be picked on and stuff like that. Did you feel like that and when you were going to school, or was it more accepted?
Well, yeah. Well, the black kids, once they started segregation, I mean, the black kids thought that I dressed white because most black youth back then were wearing slacks to school. They weren't wearing straight leg jeans and like denim jeans and like t-shirts and sneakers. So I got that from them. And then from my friends from the burbs, since I started putting like safety pins in my shirts and like and walking into school with it and Sex Pistols things on it, they totally didn't. Their parents, I guess, because of just the pressure of being on the burbs, they just weren't ready for anarchy in the UK and fuck, you know what I mean? Like basically fuck the system type thing. So I just got left out in this kind of middle ground of having about 4 or 5 really good friends. And we just made do, you know what I mean? People were just completely dumb, you know, towards anything that was different back then. And it wasn't because they were ignorant of it, it was because they couldn't even understand it. And to me, I always understood that skateboarding and punk rock and all this stuff was going to make sense because it was fun. You know what I mean? It's like, how could you not be open to fun? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I definitely agree. Because you got to think about it, when skateboarding and punk rock and any other kind of music, it's all about that. I think that's the reason why skateboarding more went to music and punk rock, because we're just the same. Like, fuck the system. We're gonna do what we're gonna do. You know, like, you can't tell us what we can't do because we're gonna do it. You know.
Right. Yeah, it's a situation where, when you were talking about that, I was like, wow, it reminded me of the time of like when Bam Margera just bought this piece of property out near Westchester, and I guess I don't know if he had anything out there to skate yet. And he really
you're talking about the Bam Castle?
Yeah, the Bam Castle, yeah. And one time out there, before we all just started going out there to hang out all the time, he had Slayer play his backyard, and it was
what?
It was wild to see them there on a stage, full stage gear, full Marshall stacks everywhere. They played 4 songs. There's 4 Viva La Bam episode, but all my friends that were in the pit, that were skaters that I saw skating, like, I mean, it was like, to know that skateboarding pushed it as far as you can get a metal band play somebody's backyard, and it's a backyard of a well-known skater who's just about to be a megastar. It's like that blew my mind, because I grew up listening to Slayer with Tommy Guerrero, and never, from seeing them in San Francisco when they were just a small band, I never thought that I would see them in a big band in Pennsylvania playing somebody's backyard, and everyone in the crowd was a total skater. Like, it was completely bugged out. Most of those guys couldn't even get into a pit because they're, you know, too broken up right now. But it was just kind of the last hurrah of like what grown men do, you know, when they have the opportunity through skateboarding. You know what I mean? It only happened once with Bam. I mean, he's done other things, but that was the craziest thing I've ever seen a skateboarder produce and be like, no, I'm going to make this happen. I don't care what it takes. Like,
that's awesome, dude. And I'm going back a little bit. Did you ever play with Tommy Guerrero and Ray Barbie?
Yeah, we have a group band called Black Project, and is it Blacktop Project? Sorry, and that's on Rush Productions out of Japan. It's a Blacktop Project. It's myself, Tommy, Ray, Matt Rodriguez, and Josh Lippy. There's 2 records out, and there's also one that's kind of like more. The project was started with Ray Barbie, Matt Rod, and Tommy. They went on the skate trip and they just created stuff on a 4-track. They go to a different spot, create a song, go to a different spot, create a song. And then they had me and another drummer from Chicago play over top of that. Then they decided to make a group out of that and include me. I would tour with those guys, and then Tommy would do his solo stuff. I would do and play on Tommy's records and do his tours, and the same with Ray. So we all kind of bopped around, doing a lot of tours in Japan and Europe, kind of doing this music. You know, they're really in this kind of like a psychedelic funk music to be in the middle of kind of what they do. But you know, it's cool. There's no vocals or anything. They're just open to just like letting music kind of speak for itself. So I'm glad that these skaters once again wanted to take a chance with what they love about jazz music and everything, but make it approachable to a skater crowd, and then make it approachable to the rest of the world. Because a lot of my friends that don't skate love Tommy's music and Ray's music, you know.
That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome that you guys do that together, you know what I mean? And like inspire non-skaters to jam out and listen to your music, you know what I mean? That's pretty awesome. And do you feel like you were kind of like, do you feel like looked up to you because you were the first, skateboarder / punk rock musician?
I think like when Tommie,
I didn't mean to give you that whole thing, but
yeah. No, I just think as far as Tommie and Ray, I mean, Tommie and I immediately met at Del Mar skate park. We were just in the midst of a session. I met him and Fish and Cooksey and a bunch of guys, just like kind of like the staples of the early Jacks team from San Francisco. So we were just more on that. And then Tommie and I started talking about music. And so I was like, look, when I go back home, I'm going to come back to San Francisco, because I knew that basically the reason why the first version of McRad broke up is our lead singer and guitar player only had a visa for high school. So when he graduated, he had to go back to Holland. And so that's why there was a separation. And I ended up going out to San Francisco and jamming with Tommie from a prior trip of us being at Del Mar, skate ranch together. And when we first jammed together is when I was basically in the midst of writing Weakness, but I didn't play that song for him yet. I was working on the song McShred, which is the second song in what was that, Public Domain, for the Ray Barbie part. Basically, Tommie came up with the change, you know what I mean? We're just two young kids just hashing out music. So it was like we were all on each other's level. And Ray's in the mix because of the skating, but then Ray and Lance Mountain had a band and they jammed a bunch. So I watched Ray and those guys come up, and Ray build his thing and build his own identity. So I think that we all look on to each other, and the people that even support our music kind of look on to each other because they have bands and different things, and they may not get the chance to tour as much as we do or whatever else comes with that. But I've been finding a lot of common people who are really inspired by music, who follow what we do because we just give the music back to them. You know what I mean? That's all I get from it. You know what I mean? We're all drawn from different places.
That's awesome, dude. I mean, that's to me. While you telling me the story, I'm picturing this in my head, like you and Tommie as young kids just jamming out and having a good time.
Tommie's a badass, man. People don't know how badass of a bass player he is, and him playing in Free Beer, and he was a total metalhead when we met. Like he didn't.
He was really. I was expecting metalhead, dude.
Like most of the people that play bass in hardcore bands, like Tommie was able to smoke them with like only playing with fingers, and he was like, probably about. He was so small back then. His bass was bigger than he was. He played a Rickenbacker bass, and literally when I saw the last Free Beer show, I think he was 15 at that time, maybe 16. It was right when he was about to get on POW. And dude, he looked like he was like a 12-year-old kid on stage. He was killing it on bass.
What?
Killing it, like everything, like straight, like the dude from Iron Maiden, like just straight that style, like no bullshit, like every note, like Tommie's a beast, you know what I mean? But it's like as a friend, I watched him take the bass guy, and turn it into the guitar guy, because the guitar thing with the knowledge of bass has more of a voice, because the bass notes are going to lie and are going to sit. Like if he had the facility of what he did on bass with his guitar playing, he'd be one of the best out there. Like he'll learn that he'll get there. Like if you heard Tommie play bass, seriously, man, you'd be like, holy shit. Like this kid is like out of control, like a bass player, like dumbfounded. Like, and it's weird that he loves skating that much too. So that's why we all got sparked off of each other. Cause I knew, once he told me his parents were in music, and he comes from a history of that whole thing, like him having a chance to give that to skating and punk rock, and then giving it to soul and funk and everything else that he creates. It's wild that we were blessed by our elders with this kind of gypsy gift with music, and we were able to just put it out back into the world without any kind of like folklore. It has to go here. It has to go there. You got to go to opera, theater. It's like, they thought we were crazy supporting skateboarding. They knew we were doing something good, but people literally thought we were out of our minds.
Yeah, and look at you guys now. All you guys. You guys, you, Ray, and Tommie. You guys, and everybody, and Lance, and everybody, dude. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
And now that the family that, you know, your parents are probably looking at you guys now like, dude, you guys finally, not finally did it, but you did what you wanted to do. And we're so proud.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Compared to where life used to be, we've overdone it because I'm able to like have kids. My other friends have had kids, and be able to, the things that I've seen and gone through, my kids have been able to go on and prosper and do their own thing. And you know what I mean? There's highs and lows. And of course you want to make more money here or make more of an impression here and there. But the fact that I was able to start these dreams, like riding a skateboard as a kid, and then just to keep my skateboard constant in my life and always in my car or always by my side, even on trips where I knew that I wasn't going to get to a skate park, it just made sense because it's just, it's something that it gave me a positive plan B to mentally be someone else, because my work was so different. It was more diverse than just staying within the skateboard realm. I was playing with different bands and dealing with different situations and playing corporate gigs and playing weddings and dealing with all the pressures of dealing. I wanted to learn from all of it. I wanted to be more of like, if I'm going to talk about music, I should learn from all aspects of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You know what I mean? And I mean, of you playing, you know, like, you know, I read a little bit about you, a little more like about your music side. I knew about your skating side, but a little more about your music side. I mean, you play stuff with Billy Idol and
Billy Joel,
Billy Joel. Sorry, Billy Joel. You can say Billy Idol. That'd been awesome if you played with Billy Idol.
That'd be cool. I love it. It'd be cool to do some of the Idol.
But the main one that stuck out with me was fucking, how'd you get up with Bad Brains? That's awesome, dude.
Oh, yeah.
That's legendary to me, dude. Like, I love Bad Brains, dude.
Yeah, like I knew those guys. I knew HR since I was like 19. He gave McBride our first 2 shows in DC when he had HR and Company started up with his brother Earl. And then after that, I basically started hanging out in New York when I was playing guitar for Underdog. And that was like say 86-ish. And because I was up in New York, I ran into Doc and Daryl one night, and we were just talking, and they were like, hey, we should get together and play some music. And we live up in Woodstock. And at that point, I thought everyone lived in New York proper. They had like apartments, in like the Lower East Side, but all their families and kids and everything were up in Woodstock. So I finally got a chance to go up there and jam with them when they were on a band break, a band hiatus. They were figuring out lead singers. And right before they recorded this LP Rise, which was Mackie on drums, I rehearsed that record and kind of got the first 4 or 5 songs for the record for them to get a demo budget for it. And that was cool. And Mackie did the tour. Israel was in the band at that point. And when they finished that year of touring, which is kind of a grind out, you're busting your balls. You're doing like 28 shows, 30-day tours. You know what I mean? So you're getting blasted out. So I think Mackie was pretty much tired of doing that. I come in to finish out the rest of the tours for Epic Records, which released Rise. And that was basically my whole, I learned more from working with Doc and Daryl because they're great musicians and great songwriters. But how I look at it now from a business standpoint is I was called in to help someone's brand stay vibrant in the market. And why wouldn't I? Because it's one of my favorite all-time bands. And I get to actually learn, because my dad taught me how to learn from different musicians that were more advanced and older and more seasoned. You know what I mean? So to me, I was able to join a university of like the top of the top, but also learn the folkloric aspect of what the band was, why they were called Mind Power in the beginning. And, they went from doing like the hippie phase of punk rock into the straight Rasta phase. You know what I mean? There's a whole path of what those guys went through. You know what I mean? They weren't just like the Rastafari chant down Babylon guys. They were out there wilding with everybody else in DC. DC is a multicultural environment even back then. So they were exposed to everything, every sort of music, every sort of vibe. So to learn from the Bad Brains and to play live shows with them and, tour Europe and do Japan and do the States and to see the anxiety, see the good and the bad side of it. It was still probably one of the best times, because we were doing 25 songs a night, 2.5-hour shows, just doing 28 shows in a row, a couple of days off, you know what I mean? Just because they're travel days, we just kind of catching up to other situations or just trying to make the best out of our time. It was wild because, you had to be in shape. You know, it's not just I could be a punk rock, you know, musician and I got the attitude. It's like you have to physically, you know, every night is war. You know, I mean, I've hyperextended my knuckle. I've done everything, just not even thinking about this as like actually a job now. It's not just me just flexing because I know how to play their music. It's like these tours are long. This is grueling work. You know what I mean? I got to understand my body out here. I can't fuck around.
Yeah, dude, that's just bad. I mean, to me, that's amazing, dude. Like you got to, you know, be part of Bad Brains and stuff like that. That's just, you know, or any type of music in all the bands, you know, every musician you've been with, that's amazing, you know.
Thanks, man.
I mean, because you got to think about it from you coming from, you know, as a young age of a dream, you know what, screw school, I'm not going to go to college, I'm going to live my dream, to where you at now. That's amazing, dude. Like that's a whole book. You know what I mean?
I mean, at some point I want to pull it all together, but I kind of want to tie nature into it because it's like me as and the reason why I'm going in this direction right now is because there's just a lot of I guess kind of say forceful insight of like what it's like to be ethnic or what it's like to not be ethnic, or what it's like to be ethnic and feel pressured, and what it's, you know, not like to be ethically pressured and you have all this freedom. You know what I mean? It's like what I've learned about myself within my lifestyle outside of all the oppression of how Black people are treated or whatever's going on in life. As an athlete and as an artist, all my mistakes with my health and how I treated my professional career came from how I was raised, and not that how that I was raised was wrong, but there's a certain math that you have to learn about life if you want to be able to creatively put that pressure on your body to always deliver and to always be on point and then always be your own executive producer. It takes a lot of brain power and a lot of brain width to be able to really collectively do that. And then also to attract the right people around you. You know what I mean? I've learned from these guys and from what I've done and everything about that. You know what I mean? Because I can't look at the oppression of my skin color that got in the way of like, oh, well, why I'm not this because I'm famous versus, you know what I mean, with money or famous. I'm more still caught up in the learning and how to restack everything through this, because I know that I've done a lot, but the doing a lot is just me looking at the opportunities that are around me and just saying, you know, this art at one point may not be as fruitful because for some reason things may have to be separate due to music change, due to environment, due whatever. And now we're pretty much at that state of mind to where if we're not grasping on to things and events like these, people aren't going to be able to see and make all the dots that we were able to by going to New York and hanging out when there was no cell phones and whatever, and learning how that, and watching Ian McKay come up and watching Shepard Fairey come up and watching Spike Jones come up through skateboarding and blow the roof off, and watching Tony Hawk blow the roof off, and bam, you know, like people are more separate now. We had a part of life that was so unique that if you really did apply yourself back then, you got to learn a lot on hand. You know what I mean? You got to learn a lot from what you loved about what it was like to be involved on the creative side of life without this other social bullshit pressures involved.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. And it's so true. You know, it's different when we were growing up, you know, in the 70s, 80s, you know, even some 90s, you know, and to have like, to become what we want to do now, we had to go through so much stuff to be creative and to think outside the box, you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of competition back then too. Everyone was good. I mean, there's so many people busting out, and I mean, and then the hierarchy stuff that was already out in New York, the Andy Warhol crew and everybody that was doing stuff, and I mean, there was just all this stuff just jumping off. So you really had, I mean, there was people that were jumping into the lifestyle, which they do, but you know, you really had to be focused on what you invested your time and money in back then too, because people weren't really supportive of you. Just like, well, let me just go and wing this and see if it works. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're immediately cut down if you were thought of as phony. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and a couple more things. Do you have anything you want to jam out? Any song? And you want to jam out a little bit or what?
I don't have anything here now. It's still kind of early in the morning, but what I can do is,
You haven't had your coffee yet, huh?
yeah. If you need me, if there's a way that I can do like a specific song or a version of a song, like, film it and then send it to you to add on to something, I can do that. You know what I mean?
Well, how about this? I'll get you on because we're working on season 4 right now for TSM Live Show.
Okay.
We'll have you come on there and do a live performance on that. How about that?
Sure. Yeah. And I would have done it now. Maybe it's not. I have a studio session that I have to go to right now that I'm really excited about. So I'm sorry for me being a little spaced out. I'm gathering as much creative energy as I can.
No, you're killing it, dude. And last question. What can you say to the upcoming skaters and musicians?
Upcoming skaters and musicians, guys, girls, people out there, figure out what you're doing with all your gear and make sure your health is right, your sneakers are right, your vibes right. If you're landing on your body wrong or doing things wrong, because skateboarding and music, we sit wrong, do things wrong, create bad habits. I mean, it's about your anatomy. If you can learn about what's working for you up front, then learning about the process of music and the mistakes are a lot easier, but both are grueling to the anatomy, because I've, had a bunch of massage therapists say, "What do you do? You hike?" And I'm like, "No, I just carry around my music gear." I'm like, "Well, what you're doing is completely wrong to your body." So there is a right and wrong way to get into like our lifestyle, because both lifestyles of music and skating, it's cool to be able to haul your bags around. You know what I mean? You got to learn how to travel light and know that 20 years of that it's hard for me to get up sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm doing my best to stay vibrant and keep my diet right. But knowing what I know now, I wish I would have had more of that in my earlier part of me developing what I know in my brain, because the brain is easier to train at an early age mentally. Even if you're having problems, it's way easier. Once you get past your 20s and your 30s, you kind of start sitting on the couch mentally. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah, dude. That's so true. And I personally want to say, Chuck, dude, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for so much what you have done for skateboarding, what you have done for music. I mean, you have inspired so many skaters and musicians out there to look up to you and to do something in life,
Thank you, man. Fun times.
Oh yeah, definitely. And hey, part 2 of you performing live coming to season 4 soon. So I'll hit you up on the schedule site on that.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the project I have with my son, Kieran. It's called Bing Crosby. We have a bunch of music dropping. So I just want to make sure that we're ready for all that.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. I'm definitely down. And then one last thing, where can people find you on social media?
Instagram, it's my name, Chuck Treece, ChuckTreece. That's my main page. And I normally put up like TikTok posts. So I like people to go to one page and then see if they can sift their way through it. I think part of the journey.
All right. Thank you so much, Chuck, man. You killed it. And I look forward to having you perform soon on TSM Live Show.
All right, man. Stokes.
All right, homie. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right, Lay.
Bye-bye.